There's a picture of 10 Pound Island, and I was shooting with a panorama camera. I shot it, probably a dozen times. I lined up that high watermark with the line of the city of Gloucester, and that was where it connected. It really is how the camera sees in the end.
Photojournalist, documentary filmmaker, photographer, artist. Nubar Alexanian has been looking at the world through a camera lens for over 50 years. His resume includes spreads across pages in Life magazine, the New York Times magazine, Boston magazine, and many more. Alexanian spent 5 years following musicians like Paul Simon and Emmylou Harris for his book, Where Music Comes From. He collaborated with renowned trumpeter Wynton Marsalis to create a small personal book entitled Jazz. From 1978 to 1989, Alexanian traveled to Peru, multiple trips facilitated by a Fulbright Award. The darks and lights of the images in that resulting book, Stones in the Road, act on the page with so much power they seem to have sinew and muscle. Alexanian has lived in Gloucester, Massachusetts for 50 years. He has created 2 books photographing that city, images that confess the day-to-day pathos and glory of this immigrant fishing community. And yet, at this point in his life, Alexanian is examining answers he thought he understood and posing new questions. Looking hard, for instance, at what exactly is a photograph, and asking the question with fresh emotion, what is home?
I would not use the word truth with photographs. I would use the word honesty. My sandbox is images metaphor, which means that my pictures are about how I feel about what I'm looking at. A photograph does not have to be about what's in front of the camera in order to be an honest picture. And that's where I live.
Feeling off balance, uncomfortable, is a place Alexanian trusts artistically.
Not knowing what you're doing is an important part of the process of making art. And for me, it's really important because if I know what I'm doing, most of the time I'm in a place I've already been.
And yet he's acutely aware of the difference between making art and photojournalism. In the 1980s, Alexanian decided to shoot a photo essay, his first, on Gloucester's most successful fishing family. He spent 2 years with the Brancaleone family, including 4 10-day offshore trips in which he was miserably seasick. Alexanian took this photo essay to New York City, where from a payphone, he called the photo editor of Geo magazine. He said, "I'm downstairs. If you give me 10 minutes of your time, I'm sure you will buy this story." And she did. Later, that editor went on to Fortune magazine, and Alexanian went with her. He says that every project he's worked on has been a risk, but he believes in risk. In 2012, Alexanian's daughter Abby asked, "Will you go with me to Armenia?" Alexanian had grown up in a 100% Armenian family, resettled in Worcester, Massachusetts. He spoke Armenian as a child. He traveled to 30 countries for work, but he knew nothing about Armenia. In 1915, under the cover of World War I, the Ottoman Turks murdered 1.5 million ethnic Armenians. Alexanian's 4 grandparents fled 4 different villages in what was historically Armenia, but which is considered Turkey today. The photographer and his daughter arranged to go on a guided tour of this area with 10 other people, each preparing to visit the villages where their relatives had lived. Alexanian was completely unprepared for the emotions he would feel. He later returned to historic Armenia with a cameraman. This journey became Alexanian's most recent documentary, entitled Finding Armenia, a dramatic narrative that ultimately asks, what is home?
I live in a fishing village here in Massachusetts. It's a great place. I've lived here for 50 years. This is home to me, but there's another home. If you're an immigrant, there has to be another home.
From his early professional years, Alexanian has viewed his subjects with a stark sensitivity. His book Jazz opens with the words of American saxophonist Ornette Coleman. These words could apply also to what Alexanian sees when he takes a picture. Every living thing has something inside of it that does not want to die. Find out what that is and play that.